Welcome, everybody. This is the inaugural KARDS Podcast. We're calling it the Frontline. I am your host, Christo. I am joined by, actually, you know what? If we're going to start this, I want to start this right. Now, I was called out during the World Championships last year by Julia of 1939 Games for pronouncing my co-host's name wrong, or not wrong, differently just about every time I introduced her or went over to her. So I figure we're starting this new podcast. I want to get this right. So if my lovely co-host could explain exactly how to pronounce her name so I can finally, commit that to memory. Let's start there. Start fresh in this new year.
Hey everyone, I am Elin, community manager and head of esports at 1939 Games. So the way that I generally explain how to say my name, it's kind of like El, kind of like when you start elephant, and then you move into in, kind of like sheen. So Elin.
Elin.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah. But I
All
know
right.
it's easy. There's so many kind of English speaking similarities, similar names like Ellen, it's really easy to get stuck in that pronunciation. So I really don't stress it. But I did Julia did tell me afterwards that she had mentioned it to you, and I was like, oh man, it's really no stress.
Julia did
I
that.
really appreciate the effort.
And then she photoshopped a picture of me under the sea. And I assumed she meant sleeping with the fishes. And therefore, I figured I should get this right before something bad happens to me. So, Aileen, thank you so much for explaining that to me. And thank you for joining me here on the Frontline, our first official. This is the official developer, official 1939, official whatever the heck you want to call it, podcast. And I am so pumped that we're going to get to do this. And we're doing it monthly, right?
And I'm so excited for this too. And we're gonna be doing this new kind of podcast format where we get kind of new developers on every month. Sometimes a few, sometimes it's just gonna be me and you kind of chatting about what's going on in KARDS, talking about kind of what are the latest things that we've got going on, what are the things that we've got kind of coming up in the near future, kind of going into a little bit more of a deeper dive into all the details that we have ongoing in this upcoming year.
Absolutely. And I am excited to go through all of that. I mean, we've already got a ton to talk about, and we're 20-ish days into the new year. So, we're kind of on our way there, and all of a sudden, all kinds of stuff to talk about. So I think before we move forward, why don't we take a look in the rearview mirror just a little bit? As we were preparing for this, we were chatting about the fact that we hadn't really had a chance to connect since we did the World Championships. Everybody came together in Iceland, and then we all went our separate ways. We haven't had an event. We haven't really had anything go on. So, why don't we take a look back? We crowned we didn't crown a new world champion. We crowned the same world champion for a second time. We got Jake coming back around, winning it again. We had an amazing event, phenomenal stage, great look. Now that you've had time to decompress and separate yourself from that a little bit, what are your thoughts there? How are you feeling coming out of that?
Wow. I mean, it was such an amazing event. It was such an amazing experience to be able to kind of like be a part of that sort of thing, to be able to be kind of a bit of a pivotal part in making sure, having kind of like this overall view of all the different moving parts that we have to make sure are there in order to execute this properly. And taking over from Ole, obviously, I had a lot of help from him going into this, giving me a lot of advice and telling me, okay, you need to make sure about this, and I had all these lists and so many things going on in my head in kind of the weeks leading up to the first weekend in December. It was an incredible time, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have been able to be a part of that. And it was so awesome to see the whole broadcast team in Iceland. I really wish that we could have had the players there as well, but hopefully we'll be able to do that now in 2023. Given that nothing kind of comes up. And it was really fun as well to kind of just see the kind of random challenges as well that are thrown your way. You think that you've got everything under control, everything is lined up, everything is good, and then all of a sudden, our main producer, Mark, he's meant to come here like kind of like a day early. And it's good that we booked it that way, I guess, because there was a big storm on the east coast of the US that made him essentially miss his flight. He unfortunately had to be stuck in New York for a day, but he did make it in the end. But that was kind of one of those unexpected things, that kind of had me on the phone and just kind of, trying to kind of figure out how are we going to solve this? How are we going to get him here, and how are we going to go forward? And then just kind of like random things that come up. We had a backdrop that was supposed to be in production and somehow didn't go into production. And it was just very fortunate that I was just doing follow-up, just regular follow-up and just like, hey, what's the status here? And was able to kind of get it rushed through and everything kind of came together in the end. So you can just about imagine at the end of all of it, I just think the decompression was real. I was very inflated and then just,
I'm so happy I asked the question because, obviously I was there. I saw some of the behind the scenes stuff go on, but if you were watching the broadcast, you're like, oh, the backdrop is there. The set looks great. Mark showed up. Everything was great. And so you don't see some of the, like you said, last minute panic and last minute things that go on to try and get everything put together and make everything look as good as it did. And I think it went amazing. To take it back a bit, I'm curious specifically about, the set design and the theme. We had our kind of winter warfare theme. Where did that come from? Was that always part of the plan? And kind of what was the development of that?
So there was a little bit of a kind of a conversation about that. We started by kind of thinking about, okay, so what are kind of the elements that we liked about last year? How do we want to take that into this year? And something that I really loved from last year's set, kind of looking back at it, and kind of what Ole created there was like, I love the cards boxes. I really wanted to bring those back to be kind of a center part of the set. And so we kind of thought about, okay, so like what kind of makes sense around that. We came up with a few different sort of theme ideas. And we also, so our local studio, Skausko, they had, since last year, they built this huge green screen. And, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, it would be so amazing if we could use that to have like a little bit of something dynamic going on sort of behind and creating this little bit of illusion of something moving behind there. So we kind of just went from there and then we had a few different ideas. The snow kind of theme came up and it just sort of started all kind of clicking together. We had a few kind of a little bit of input from here, a little bit of input from there, some ideas from Julia, our graphic designer, who is also like very pivotal in putting together the whole set. Really just amazing work from Julia. And then Ole, he had a few ideas about, okay, what if we add this? What if we add that? And of course, the whole kind of thing just came together like that. And when it was all kind of said and done, and the whole thing was put up together, we had a few members of the 1939 team come by the studio just the night before we started broadcasting. And they were looking, at the monitor, just saying, "This is amazing. This is, this is so kind of World War II. We're somewhere kind of in Central Northern Europe. During one of these kind of winter warfare battles, like it's spot on. So I'm so glad that it all came together like that. And of course, it's the result of like really great teamwork.
Absolutely. It takes a village to put something like that together. So it was great to see everybody from 1939 come by. Obviously, Ollie threw in his 2 cents, Yulia helping out. Heck, Darkness's girlfriend showed up and was all of a sudden our makeup artist. So everybody came together, everybody pulled their own weight, and we had a phenomenal time. I just have so many great memories from finally getting to meet everybody, finally getting to go to Iceland, because unfortunately for pandemic related reasons, I wasn't able to be there. 2 years ago. So it meant the world to get to show up. And I can't wait to your point, knocking on wood, do it with all of the players as well. Because I think that even from an analysis perspective, I'm thinking about the opportunity to sit down and maybe the night before, you're having dinner with a couple of the players and diving into their mindset around how did they put this deck together and why did they bring this list? And you get to the broadcast and you can get some of that, in-depth behind the scenes type of analysis that maybe you don't get as much of an opportunity to when you don't have that interaction. Obviously, folks like, Darkness is so connected to J King and Berto and that crew, but just having the players there too, I think is going to be such an amazing and dynamic experience. So yeah, fingers crossed all that goes well. this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah. And something I want to add as well to that though, because we've obviously, from what I understand, we've kind of like we've done it, in Iceland, then online, then in Iceland, then online, kind of like a little bit of, throughout the years, kind of changing it out a little bit, obviously with the pandemic and various other kind of reasons getting in the way. And this year we were able to kind of do it in such a way where, if you're sitting in the broadcast room, you could actually see all the players there and they could all kind of when they weren't playing games, they were all kind of in a room together where they could kind of see each other and have kind of like little interactions. So although they weren't able to kind of physically be here in 2022, I thought that was a really nice little thing that we were able to do. So they did have some sort of an interaction element with one another.
Yeah, that's awesome. And part of and this is going to be me nerding out about like the psychological side of things, but you've got some little psychological mind games too when you've got cameras on and you're seeing players' faces and then you're interacting with them behind the scenes and things. You get to see when people are sweating a little bit. You get to see kind of their reactions and things. So I definitely think that adds another layer to, how they're going about interacting together, the vibe that we get off of them, seeing them and what their kind of reactions are and things like that. I think it definitely adds another layer, and I'm looking forward to, seeing them from head to toe instead of just from like, the shoulders up.
Yeah, absolutely. But I thought that it was really nice as well. Kind of something that we saw throughout with our top four players was they had such good vibes, such good camaraderie. It was really like it was so wholesome. It was so much just like love and peace, and everything between all the games. We had. At one point, our competitor Head is coming from Hong Kong. We had a Bamboo who's from Taiwan. Um, Head kind of not being maybe as confident in English as some of the other players, and Bamboo really stepping in at a couple of different parts to help him kind of translate some of those questions that some of the more complex things that Ole was asking. So that was like so wholesome to see. These are all like really amazing, great guys.
Absolutely. I think that, sticking around after you get knocked out of a tournament to do some translation is pretty wild. Just seeing then the respect as well from like Head to J King and commenting on a video, I don't know, a year ago or something saying like, hey, I want to meet you in a tournament one day. And sure enough, it's the World Championships. So just all those little nuances are so much fun. And I think that's some of the beauty of the community, especially, with cards being a growing game. You still have a very tight knit community right now where folks are interacting regularly. They're playing against each other regularly. So you start to build some of those storylines and some of those rivalries. And thankfully, they're all in good fun and people are very positive about it. But yeah, I agree with you. It's so cool to see them interact and just see the fallout of like, oh, I lost, but like, hey, I'm super cool with who I lost to. So, it's a great experience for the players as well, I think, to, compete in that type of event.
Exactly, exactly. It was so much fun overall. Just left such a great experience, kind of in my heart. Very very wholesome stuff, and I'm so excited to go into the next year. I've already got the wheels are turning. I've already got some ideas. We're already noting down kind of like what worked, what do we want to improve upon from last year, and I'm so excited to bring in the next one in about 11 months.
Time is ticking. Time is
Yep.
ticking. Let's not jump too far ahead. We'll still give you a little bit of room to breathe. We just had the last one. You did mention that, players are likely, again, knocking on wood, going to be invited to come to Iceland. So we've already given you a bit of a teaser. And to your point, Aileen, we're still 11 months away. So players got a little something, but keep tuning into the podcast. We may drop a few little nuggets as we go. So you'll continue to get a little bit more information about that month over month. But let's start looking into the future and the pretty near future, because we're talking about this year's esports format. And I think most people saw the announcement that's come out recently regarding some of the changes. So we figured what better opportunity than right now to dive in to a little bit more depth around some of those, because reading them on paper is fine. But let's dive in. Let's talk. Let's start with the OCC. Let's talk about clashes. Let's talk about Ultimate. Why don't we just start? Can you just give us a quick run through of what that is going to look like this year, based on the announcement that happened last week?
So yeah, in 2023, we're going to have this new format with the OCCs. We're going to be creating an even more epic journey for these kind of most elite top players in the game. So we'll have these monthly OCC Clash events. which is going to go very similar to to the qualification process of 2022, where the top 6 players are automatically qualified for the top 8. The other 32 players fight for the remaining 2 spots. Then we have this experience where we'll record all of these games over the course of a weekend, essentially, all of the final top 8 games. And we'll do these in YouTube premieres the following weekend. So kind of like changing a little bit sort of the format of how we're presenting these monthly tournaments. And of course, we'll have some really expert analysts on the desk to kind of review these games and kind of go a little bit more in depth of the gameplay that we're seeing. And then from that, players will be gathering what we're calling OCC points. And so at the end of a 3-month period, essentially, we will have a look at the OCC point leaderboard and see who are the top 8 players that have gathered the most points over the course of the previous 3 months on this OCC point leaderboard. Those 8 players are going to fight in the OCC Ultimate, which is a 2-day broadcast event, cast again by some of our expert analysts. And we're going to see kind of every single game as we figure out who is the OCC Ultimate Champion. It's going to be incredibly exciting, I think, and it's a little bit kind of adding a little bit more to the OCC format, kind of, as I say, trying to kind of create this even more kind of epic journey. We have some really elite, really dedicated players in KARDS, and we really want to give these players an opportunity to be kind of highlighted in even more of an amazing kind of path.
And all right, let's start from the beginning. Let's dive into the clash a little bit more. So, from my understanding of the explanation, essentially from a player perspective, it's the same type of event, right? You're going to finish top 6, or you're going to try and qualify into kind of qualification brackets. You get there, you're going to play that top 8 kind of the same way we would otherwise. Diamond and gold prizes for that event. And then we're going to premiere that on YouTube with the recorded games, with commentary, all the good stuff you're used to in the OCC live broadcasts. Did I nail that?
Yep, that's pretty
Perfect.
much nailed. The only difference kind of, that I kind of want to highlight as well in that is that we are going to be showing every single game in these premieres. So usually in our broadcasts, for kind of time purposes, we would be kind of skipping a couple of the games in the quarterfinals there. Now we're going to showcase those as well. So if there's something kind of amazing that we kind of maybe missed out on in previously in the broadcasts, just by kind of selecting some different games to showcase, you're not going to miss anything in these premieres.
And I love that, because I feel like every time we get to an OCC, all the kind of broadcast team gets together, yourself, Mark Theus producing, all of us, and we sit down and go, all right, which games are we going to show? Because
Yeah.
to your point, unless we want to spend 12 hours casting in a day, we're going to probably select 2 of the 4 quarterfinals to highlight and really put a spotlight on. And then you have this whole back and forth of, well, people want to watch somebody like J King. They want to watch J King play. They want to watch No In play. They want to watch some of these top folks. And maybe you've got some of the newcomers like, hey, I would love to see this person who's never been in an OCC before play. And you do have to make a choice, and it does limit, who gets broadcast and who doesn't. And I think this could be fun, because you are going to get to see every game. You're going to get to see everybody play. We're going to do premieres, but like, you could watch them during a premiere. You can chat with other people at that point, or you can just chill and you turn it on, after dinner one night, or while you're studying or doing something else. So you've got that flexibility to kind of watch them as you so choose. And I think that'll give us the opportunity to get kind of more in depth, to your point as well. More time to prep, more time to cast. We're not, stuck on that schedule of like, oh, hurry up, we got to get to the next game. We got to get this thing moving, so we can really dive in and have a better experience. If you're one of those players, you're still going to have your match cast. You're still going to have that commentary. You're still going to be, on YouTube, and can go back and watch that. And I think in the past, from my understanding, even the VODs on Twitch and the stuff we put up on YouTube gets, a pretty hefty amount of viewers versus the live broadcast. So it makes sense as well to give different options to people and see how it works out.
Absolutely. And this is kind of like a different way of framing things, a different way of presenting the content, and kind of just seeing kind of what comes from this. I'm really seeing kind of 2023 as being, a year that has so many kind of possibilities for us to really see what works and what doesn't, to keep kind of developing the scene. And of course, the player base is kind of constantly growing. We have a very, an increasingly diverse player base here that we really want to make sure that we cater to. And of course, that's both on the kind of participant and the viewer side. So presenting it in this kind of different way. And of course, as you're talking about, it's so difficult to pick who are going to be those featured games. And I'm really glad that we're going to kind of give everyone a chance to be featured in these videos.
And I think that something else that's important to mention, you were talking about having a little bit more of a diverse player base, is also going to be diverse tournament formats, which at the end of the day means, we're giving the spotlight to different people, which, as much as I love J King playing in every OCC and I love watching his high level play and having him contribute in between, like in opens and things, it's fun to see new players participate as well. And let's see how they're going to do. And, by doing opens, by doing other events that we'll talk about in just a moment, you're going to give more people the opportunity to play, to be spotlighted, to be broadcast. And that's something fun. Like, don't get me wrong. I completely understand people who are used to playing in the monthly OCCs or are striving to that point because they want to be live on broadcast. I totally get that's a bit of a bummer that, hey, I'm not going to be live on Twitch. It's unfortunate. I get it. But also part of that goal is to try and spread some of that love around and make sure different people, different perspectives all get a little bit of that spotlight. So I definitely get where we're coming from that perspective, and I'm excited to talk about some of the other events and things we got coming up. But let's go to the OCC Ultimate. Let's kind of dive into that next step. So the OCC Clash, they're getting points for their placement. Makes me think of like Formula One, right? You're finishing first, you're getting however many points, second, third, all that kind of good stuff. Top 8 qualify for the ultimate, and there's a $3,000 prize pool, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like, every month in 2022, we would have $1,000 prize pool. So it's kind of like we're sort of taking those 3 months and putting it into one big pot. In this case, in the ultimates, and as I say, like being the ultimate champion, like that's a huge crown to put on someone. So I'm really excited to kind of crown the first ultimate champion, because that's like a really extra level of kind of dedication and kind of going throughout accumulating all these points. But there's another good point to make about the points, the way that they are set up. You can, for example, if you are someone like J King, you can go into a Clash event, you get 25 points for being in first place. And you might just kind of feel comfortable at that point to maybe even take a month off, and kind of maybe, even give some other players a chance to get in there in the monthly OCCs, and then kind of see how the leaderboard develops from that. So it'll be really interesting to see how this develops over the course of kind of the next 3 months. How players are accumulating the points. We of course will be. We have a page on KARDS.com dedicated to this OCC point system, and every month following the broadcast, we will be posting these brackets on there, so people can kind of follow along with who's at the top. How far do I have to get there? Yeah.
So J King's probably a bad example because we all know he has a streak that he wants to continue. So he'll likely continue to be playing in all of these for the time being. But I do get
and I
where you're
love
coming
to
from.
see him. I
Ooh.
would love to have him in every single one. Just as an example, someone who is extremely elite might consider, being able to take a break for a month in there somewhere.
Yeah, maybe not traveling through Europe, playing at whatever internet cafe he can find, but like that's dedication, and that's what it's
Yeah.
going to take to get to the ultimate level. And I think that adds a little bit more oomph behind the
Mhm.
championship. You get something more behind that crown of like. Don't get me wrong. Again, winning the OCC is something special, but being able to have more than just like, hey, we have OCC winners and a world champion. Like, hey, we've got a couple other players who have shown that they can be at that next level, and
Mhm.
really start to, like you said, have those elite dedicated folks really make it through. That OCC Ultimate, like that's going to be a full 2-day weekend affair where we're going to have
Yes.
broadcasting every match end to
Mhm.
end, all the details. It's going to be a big deal.
It is. It really is. And I'm so excited for this first event. And it's been, really interesting kind of posting about all these details, kind of getting, we're starting to kind of get some feedback from the community. And I do want to kind of go back as well, and onto the subject of the prize pool a little bit. And just make sure that that people know that we're definitely hearing them. We are hearing some feedback specifically about the prize pool, and like you mentioned earlier about the Clash kind of broadcast. We're definitely listening to this very hard, and as I say, these formats, these changes, this isn't like 100% set in stone. There is some room for adjustments. Since only leaving, I am head of esports. I don't consider myself to be the dictator of esports, and I'm not interested in being that. So the esports scene is always going to be something that is very much done in collaboration with the community, and especially all of these kind of dedicated players that we have participating in these events. So yeah. Without kind of giving too much away, without saying exactly we're going to do this or that or this or that, we will definitely take all this feedback in, review it, and go forward with it.
And I think I'm gonna speak, and like I have no association to 1939. I'm just a card player and a card lover, and I have played card games my whole life. And I understand, again, hey, you're changing something. I don't like change. Like, I don't like waking up at a different time in the morning. I don't like having something different for breakfast, let alone changing, an esports scene that I'm so used to and I've participated in for a while.
Mhm.
However, I will say, and I have again played lots of card games in my life, I will say that 1939 does a better job than just about anybody else I have ever seen at listening and taking feedback. And I think there's also an aspect of that, and you just nailed it here, where like, yeah, we heard you, we're going to talk about it, we'll see, maybe changes will happen, maybe they won't, we'll see what we can do. There's also an aspect, and I think you touched on this around the World Championships, that like there's a lot that goes into it. You didn't just draw this up on paper and go, here, I'm publishing it. Here's the update. Like, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes. There are time limitations, there are financial limitations, there are talent limitations, there are competitor limitations. Like, there's a lot that goes into this. So, saying, hey, I'm listening and changes don't get made tomorrow doesn't mean we're not listening. It means that, hey, this stuff takes time. And like you said, this is a bit of a, trial and error sometimes. Like, hey, things might get changed, things might go well. We might learn a thing or two and we'll adapt and go forward. So I just think that that's something that, in working with you all, I really appreciate that you take the feedback, and everybody does get a voice, whether they feel that or not sometimes. But I'm excited to see how this year unfolds, because while change can be scary, it can also be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's really important that we do kind of make some changes. What I really want to do is, obviously have like a really fun and engaging and vibrant esports scene for cards. And I think that if we just were to look at 2022 and say, okay, well, we've nailed it, guys. There's nothing we can do. Let's just do this all again. This is perfect. Like, I don't think that would be kind of pushing anything forward. And I think it's really important that we keep doing that in order to keep kind of a healthy and vibrant scene, to think about, okay, what are kind of the alterations and changes that we can make? Obviously, the thought with the OCC is to, it's really about kind of like reframing and presenting things in a little bit of a different way, and kind of adding a little bit of something onto it to kind of make it even more epic, make it into this ultimate thing, I'm really excited to see kind of the results of this, and see kind of how things continue, obviously, to develop sort of throughout the year.
And I will add one last thing to that, because while I don't really have any association with 1939, I do work very closely with 983 and with Mark Theus, and I have for a couple of years now. And for one, to your point about things looking ultimate, I'm really excited to see some of the changes, just even in the presentation, and what we can do when we're putting stuff up on YouTube and we're not trying to manage players and talent and games and the system and OBS and everything else all at once. So I think there's going to be some really cool, even just visual changes and upgrades. No pressure, Mark. For this coming year. So like, I think, again, to your point, a lot's going to come together. I think it's a lot of information all at once. Like, even we're having a hard time keeping up with it. So I will ask the folks for patience. Give it a minute. See how it plays out. You may just be pleasantly surprised.
Let's hope so. I mean, as you know, as you mentioned, this is definitely the result of a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of thought has gone into it. But that's not to say that what we've landed on now is the perfect way to do things, or that kind of it's going to be the way that things are forever. So yeah, let's see how things go.
Absolutely. So, all right, the ultimate, the clashes, the OCC. Are we? Do we feel good about what we covered? Anything? Any last additions you want to make, or do we just move on to the opens now?
I think we've covered this pretty well,
Put a bow on it.
and of course, like sorry.
We put a bow on it. We're good. I know you
Yes,
look
yes.
like you wanted
I
to
think
add something. So if there's something last,
we can more or less go ahead and put a bow on it. I wanted to just add kind of like the key here is of course kind of development, kind of going forward, making something more epic, and of course this kind of community element, listening to the community, doing this in collaboration with the community, with the competitive community, especially, and yeah, I have high hopes for the future.
you and me both. So let's talk opens. What is changing in the opens this year?
So what isn't changing? No, I shouldn't say it like that. So the way that we've kind of worded it in this communication is that there will be some changes in the opens throughout the year. So we're already kind of thinking, that the first opens might not be the same as the second opens that we have in the year. Of course, the first one we have is the Open 15. And we're going to have a couple of little adjustments in that. Now we're going to feature a $1,500 prize pool like we did in 2022. We're going to have a lot more diamond and gold prizes. I believe that we had no diamond prizes last year. We're adding quite a few of those, and we're also adding gold prizes going down all the way to the 32nd player. So really kind of hopefully giving a lot of incentive to especially kind of newer players to kind of just come in and give it a go, see how far you can get, put a little bit of effort into it. Okay, maybe you can't quite make it all the way to the top. I know that it's scary coming into an event like this, and you look at the people who have been here for a while, who really know the drill, and you just think, well, kind of, I'm never gonna get up there. But you know what? If you kind of put in a little bit of effort, you might make it to the 32nd. You might get 1,000 gold, and you might be able to buy a few packs, and that might yield some more cards that you can then use going forward. So really kind of trying to expand this for the kind of more newcomer into the tournament scene. And then we're going to have a slight format alteration as well. So up until this point, we've had these kind of two Swiss qualifiers, which both have a free-for-all format. There's no requirement. You don't have to kind of bring anything in particular. And then we've had the top 16, where that's where we go into open deck lists. There's deck submissions. You have to bring, a set amount of decks. So this year in this first one, we're gonna change it a little bit out so that in the top 16, all the way up until the top 4, which is the top 4 is the broadcast portion. So the top 16 is the kind of day previous to that. So in that stage of the tournament, we're not going to make a requirement of deck submission or that we have to have open deck lists. We're going to have essentially kind of closed deck lists. You don't have to submit something, but you do need to win with a deck from a different main nation every time. So let's say you're coming into this, I'm bringing my Japan deck. If I win with this deck, then I have to pick something from a different main nation going forward. But if I lose with my Japan deck, let's say I'm bringing a Jagro deck, if I lose with that, I can go ahead and bring that again into the next match, or I can even switch out, and bring in some other kind of Japan nation deck. So it kind of adds, I think, a little bit more mystery, a little bit of both challenge and opportunities for the participants, and kind of a little bit more of opportunity to react to sort of what your opponent is doing. And you might kind of come into it and find, oh, okay, maybe kind of the decks that I've picked aren't really good versus the ones that I'm coming up against. Well, maybe what if I make some adjustments here? What if I have kind of a secondary thing I can bring into it? So I think that is going to be really interesting to see play out in the format for this first one.
And I agree, and I think that this just goes to emphasize the fact that the opens are really meant for new players to participate, right? Like you said, hey, we're going to give more free stuff away so people can play, participate, win a bit of gold, improve their collection, and continue to build up their experience in the tournament scene. Something else I like about limiting the deck list to top four, or the open deck list to top four, is, in my opinion, and heck, could tell me I'm wrong. I think that once you open deck lists, that's where you start seeing some of those elite players, the folks we see all the time, the J Kings, the Darkness, the Noans, all of them. That's where they thrive, right? Because they know what their opponent's going to throw at them. They got the deck list open. They're crossing cards off. Like, that's where they really excel. So it's like one less tool to take away, or it's one tool you're taking away from the more seasoned tournament player. And you're putting the ball a bit in the court of somebody who's maybe a little bit newer to the scene, because they haven't had that experience yet of being very strict with what they're playing, how they're playing, and how they're interacting. So I definitely think it's one of those scenarios where, like, anything can happen. Anybody can really make it. Pick the right deck list, bring the right deck, have the right matchup, and it's a little bit less stagnant. Like, we could see some really interesting upsets going into this first open.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited to see the results of it. And, I think that it could be, an opportunity for the more seasoned players as well, to kind of diversify a little. And of course, but it's just a kind of different sort of scenario where you're forced to think a little bit more on your feet. And I think that that's kind of like an interesting new sort of skill set to bring into it. Another kind of extra little layer to see kind of, what players can really do when they get up to that stage. And of course, making sure that the opens is, both very welcoming to newer players into the tournament scene. And also, it's something that's open for everyone, we have the OCC that's for our kind of most elite players, and then we have the opens, and we kind of want to have like a little bit of a different thought process behind these two.
And that's exactly what my next point was going to be. Instead of just copying and pasting, like, hey, we do the OCC this way, we'll just do the open this way, and you just qualify differently, or you can enter freely. Like, you're not creating a different experience for your players. And again, you tend to favor those who are a bit more seasoned and who, typically perform. So I like this because, again, I think it adds a layer of fun, adds a lot of different potential upsets, different players who may make it. And again, we're talking about different broadcasts. We're talking about a top four where, yeah, maybe somebody newer in the community makes it up there and can get their spot live on stage. So some exciting stuff coming with the opens as well. And then, to your point, you mentioned this first one may not look like the second one, which may not look like the third one. So still some changes, still some new things that may come as the opens kind of unfold throughout the year.
Absolutely. And another point to that as well. I mean, we are doing these now every 3 months instead of every other month like we used to do in the previous year. But I think that also brings in more opportunity for kind of different sort of tournament styles, which I believe we are going to go into next with KARDS Special Operations.
I love the name.
I'm really excited about this one.
I love the name. I also, and I'm sure we'll get into it in a moment, where the format is really interesting to me, since my meager collection might actually be able to compete. So why don't you tell us, Elin, about the Special Operations tournament?
So the special operations is something that's kind of like especially geared towards the more maybe newer player, someone who doesn't have a fully fleshed out collection of cards. And through this kind of format, we're going to start off the year by doing a popper format. We'll announce more about the next formats as we go on. But we'll have some kind of unique elements to it where you're required to submit decks that adhere to some specific rules. Of course, the popper being that you can only bring either standard or limited rarity cards. So you don't have to have all of the kind of a full collection of elite cards. And this format is going to be, you only have to submit one deck that adheres to these specific rules. And all games are going to be a best of one series. We'll do a double elimination bracket. So, you do have a second chance if you're not kind of making it with your one deck. But it's certainly a much different experience, both for the participants and then for the viewers. This will be an event that kind of takes place over the course of just one weekend. So we'll have kind of the qualifying stage, if you will, on the first day, and then the broadcast stage on the second day, where the top four players in that format will kind of duke it out for the win of that particular format for that month. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. I think it's going to be something that's a lot more casual, a lot more fun. The prizes here are going to be diamonds and gold, and of course, tons of fun throughout this event. And I think that this is especially. As I say, someone who doesn't have a fully fleshed out collection, and maybe even someone who kind of has some experience and has a lot of fun just sort of trying out building different types of decks, getting like a little bit of an opportunity to do that in a tournament setting.
And I think exactly that. You've got somebody who maybe doesn't have a full collection and will take advantage of some of these special rules. But hey, even a player who has a full collection and has been to all of these tournaments, like they're still limited, right? They've got less that they can possibly do. So they're gonna have to be good deck builders. You can't just go out there and copy whatever, Cappuccino was playing in the last OCC. You've got to get creative and you got to put something forward. And I think the submit one deck, best of one, double elimination, it makes it easy to get into, right? I think that's also some of the limitations that some players have, where they say like, wow, I got a whole day here. Like this could, I've been a part of tournaments that have gone on for, 8+ hours. And sometimes you just don't have the time to do that. So being able to come in, say, hey, I got the flexibility. I can jump in, I can play a game, I can play a couple games, maybe get knocked out, maybe win some prizes. And again, continue to bolster my collection, get some experience with how tournaments work, get that into the opens, qualify for an OCC. Like it's cool to have those building blocks that eventually lead you kind of towards the world championship.
Exactly. And I think that that's why, it's really nice to have this kind of alternative format tournament, something where you're just getting kind of like the diamonds and the gold from it, a way to come in to test out your skills at building a different type of deck, test out your kind of ability to play in tournaments, get more experience in that, and then kind of leave from it with some prizes and potentially be able to kind of take that forward, buy a few more packs, get a few more cards, and maybe next time you'll sign up for the open.
Right on. All right, I'm gonna start brewing my popper deck because I think that's something that I can actually put together. Awesome. So that first popper event's happening in February. How often are these special operations events going to be happening?
So the special operations events are going to be happening every 3 months as well. So you may have caught on a bit of a theme here. We will kind of have like one main broadcast happening every month throughout the year. In February we're going to have the special operations. In March we will have the open finals, and then April, beginning of May, we will have the ultimate 2-day epic finals of the OCC, of the previous three OCC months.
Love it. We're building up to that. We're building up to OCC Ultimate. So we're gonna have another busy year in KARDS Esports. I mean, a lot is changing. The events, the quality, the caliber of player. That's not going to change. That's still going to be a phenomenal series of events. So I am pumped. I'm excited. Obviously, that all culminates in the World Championship in December next year. We talked about, wanting all the players there, wanting obviously the broadcast team there. Anything else you want to give us about the World Championship, or we have to wait and see? I know a lot of pressure. We didn't talk about this before. I'm just throwing it out there while
No,
we're
no, no,
here.
no. So there isn't kind of like a ton more that I can reveal at this point. The World Championship is something that we will announce more details about as we kind of get closer. But we do expect for the qualifiers to happen in a very similar type of way, where we have these in-game qualifiers, two separate qualifiers that each run over the course of 3 weekends. And then from that, moving on into the kind of the knockout stage, where we'll have our top 128 players battling it out to see kind of moving into the double elimination bracket, and then finally seeing who's going to make it to come to Iceland. So you can
Awesome.
expect a lot more information about this kind of in the upcoming months as we kind of get closer to the sort of latter half of the year.
Oh, totally. I'm like dropping this on you out of nowhere 11 months in advance. So I get it, but seems like the qualification is going to stay mostly the same. So that's one thing that probably isn't changing a whole heck of a lot when it comes to KARDS Esports, but lots of other changes, lots else going on. I think that covers the majority of what we wanted to make sure we tackled here today, Aileen. Anything else we've got 2023 coming up here, or we're in it. We've got the esports kicking off. What about from a non-esports side of things? Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to mention? We don't have to go into detail. We can tease some people for future episodes, but anything you want to bring up that people should be on the lookout for in the next couple of months this year?
So we've definitely got a lot of exciting things up ahead, and I wish I could tell you more about it at this point, but I can't tell you a whole lot of details. But something that I've kind of been personally working on for the last few months that I do want to kind of drop in here. I've been working on kind of a bit of a revamp on what we call the Cards Contributor Program, which some Cards players may know and recognize. This is, a really kind of fantastic program that was kind of designed to be like the official framework for the support between 1939 games and the contributors that we have making various types of content related to cards in some way. And just contributing in various ways to the game and to its community. And so this is kind of like a revamp that I've been working on, which involves a lot of different sort of details. Of course, the kind of main bones of the program remaining much the same, but with a few different kind of additions and twists. And kind of making sure that this is something that we really hold closely and do everything that we can to really support and uplift all our awesome content creators. So that's something that I'm hoping to be able to roll out in the next kind of couple of months, depending on how the workload ends up. But it's definitely been a labor of love for me for the last few months, and I'm really, really excited to be able to roll this out in the first part of this year.
Amazing. So, tune into the podcast every month, and you're going to get more details about things like the Cards Contributor Program. To Elin's point earlier on, we're going to have, developers showing up. We're going to have, who knows what special guests you might see on the Frontline every month. Before we wrap this first ever show up, is there anything else, Elin, you would like to add in, or any last thought you'd like to leave us with?
We love you guys. It's been amazing being here for this first episode. The community of cards is such a fantastic one, and as we've mentioned, we're going to be bringing in kind of various developers throughout the months to talk about specific details of what exactly is happening at any given time, what is coming up, dive a little bit deeper into the thoughts behind different things. So definitely stay tuned for this as we go on into the year. Make sure you don't miss an episode. It only gets better from here. These are not the best words.
I mean, I thought that was spot on. I don't think there is a better way to leave this off. And I mean, we've talked about how 1939 Games listens to the community. So like, if there's a topic you want us to cover, if there's somebody you want us to have on the show, like, let us know. I make no promises whatsoever that will actually happen. But like, hey, give us your feedback, give us your thoughts. If we can make the show better, then Aileen, to your point, like this is episode 1. Like, if it's anything like Star Wars, it definitely gets better over time and then worse again, but like we won't go there. Anyway, that went sideways real quick. But this has been a wonderful episode. I'm so happy we did this and got to iron out some of the, esports competitive stuff and all of that. So let's wrap this one up. The first official episode of the Frontline, the official Cards podcast. Tune in next month for more cards info and behind the scenes look.